Yeah, now we enter the energy of the four, sanctuary and blessing for Terra Nova. This is the body, the temple, the sanctuary, the refuge, the home, the place of protection and blessing of the children of the universe. And these are our children and maybe the children of the future, children of spirit, heart, mind, and body. So I want to start with some of the ideas in visionary cosmology about the meaning, the scientific meaning of what the four is. The four begins geometrically as a tetrahedron. And the tetrahedron is where you have 3 points, 1, 2, 3 in a triangle. And then you can take another point and you can put it off of that plane in another place. And you can wind up, for example, with a tetrahedron, which is a pyramid with 3 sides. So it's got 3 points at the base and 3 sides. So that is the first moment of moving into a place of solidification, the first solid. 1, 2, and 3, you're not in a solid zone yet. You can make a plane, but you can't make a solid. 3 can make a plane, but not a solid. Pythagoras called this the tetrad, and the tetrad in Greek means that which holds the power to create 3-dimensional space. Those 4 points, you can create 3-dimensional space. This tetrahedron is connected with the 4th power of stabilization. And the 4th power of stabilization is that which orders, limits, defines, and contains substances and energies. So it's a container, and it contains all of that. The universe creates conditions that make evolution possible through creating centers, and these centers can produce ever-evolving forms. So it's a place where that something can be born out of. It's like a center. The universe creates subatomic and atomic interactions that give rise to galaxies, and such as the Milky Way. And the Milky Way, in the Milky Way, our sun arose, and our solar system arose at the same time. So what I want to do is I want to just move forward and talk about Earth for a few minutes as a creative field, as a stabilized entity that is capable of giving rise to whatever forms come forth. So 4.5 billion years ago, our sun congealed out of these building blocks in the universe, the building blocks of hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, for example. Those were just some of them. And our sun congealed into a swirling disk. And in that swirling disk came the birth of Earth, right? All those things started swirling together. And then we get the birth of our Earth. So our Earth is a dynamic planet which then generated an environment in which life as we know it, just life as we know it, could emerge. There may be all other kinds of life, but we say, oh, this planet is perfect for life because it's exactly the right distance from the sun, for one thing, and it has exactly the right temperature. So it's perfect for life as we know it. And then within the planet itself, it has a number of internal conditions that generate and sustain different kinds of life. So we're starting really big here on the picture. And those different kinds of life are called biomes, for example. A biome, B-I-O-M-E, is an environment. And basically there are 4 different biomes on this planet. There's tropical, temperate, subarctic, and Arctic. Tropical, temperate, subarctic, and Arctic, and those are the biomes. And these are stabilized environments where that life can arise out of. So the biomes, within the biomes, populations arise within each biome. And a population is the life forms that would inhabit that particular biome. And then these life forms create communities. And the communities are composed of interacting life forms within the biome. And then out of that, the biome with the population and with the community is created an ecosystem. So within this ecosystem, within this biome, there are no boundaries, no particular boundaries. An ecosystem has no boundaries. The only way an ecosystem is bound is if we decide to create a boundary so that we can look at it for some reason. We want to study it. So we're going to say, oh, this ecosystem goes from, from the bottom of this mountain to the ocean, and we're going to go 1 mile deep, and we're going to call that an ecosystem, and we're going to look at what's in that ecosystem, because otherwise they're not bound. They overlap and move. Okay, and then within that ecosystem, what develops is what's called climax communities. And climax communities are highly stabilized communities that can go on for maybe even millions of years. And in the climax community, you will have like a certain type of tree that's dominant, certain animals that are dominant, and so on. So the climax communities, they don't remain forever, okay, because there is evolution involved. But we've had several fairly stabilized times on the Earth, most notably 4. So the first one, the first stabilized era, was called Precambrian, and that goes from 4.6 billion years ago. That's how old this Earth is, 4.5 billion roughly, 4.6 billion years old. Precambrian goes from 4.6 billion to 570 million years ago. And during that Precambrian time is when bacteria emerged. Then next we go into the Paleozoic era. And the Paleozoic era is 570 million years ago to 230 million years ago. And then in that time frame, we had algae, seed plants, and fish. These are just some of the ideas, like algae, seed plants, and fish. There were other things too. Then we go into the next one, and that one is called Mesozoic, the Mesozoic era, from 225 million years ago to 190 million years ago. And in the Mesozoic, we had flowers, the emergence of flowers, and dinosaurs. I'm just picking out my 2 favorites, but flowers and dinosaurs. And now, so that's our Earth, and now we come up to us. We come up to the Cenozoic era, Cenozoic, starting 65 million years ago to the present. So this was, as you all know, this is when the dinosaurs disappeared. Maybe there was a giant asteroid. Something happened that was cataclysmic, right? And then we move into the next era, the Cenozoic era, and here is where mammals emerge. And we are mammals. We don't think of ourselves like that a lot, but we're actually mammals, and we emerged, and then we started creating a culture. So 12,000 years ago, which wasn't very long ago, human culture emerged. And then human culture started to stabilize. Okay, so what I'm leading to now is what have been the stabilized periods in human culture, and where are we today? Okay, so first we had the Paleolithic culture. This is early humans, and this is 1.6 million years ago to 20,000 years ago. And the great thing that happened culturally for humans during that time was the domestication of fire, which allowed people to move. You could carry fire with you if you knew how to make it. Okay, then we move into the Neolithic. That's modern humans. That is 35,000 years ago to, they mark it to, this is awesome to me, 35,000 years ago to 5,000 BC, or BCE. Okay, what comes in 35,000 years ago to 5,000 BCE? Tools, pottery, weaving, domestication of animals, metalwork. And there we see the emergence of Homo sapiens sapiens, called modern humans. And do you know we are Homo sapiens sapiens? We are modern humans. So we emerged somewhere about 35,000 years ago. It wasn't very long ago. We emerged with this idea, with this sense that we were somebody. How do we know that? Because we can see the paintings on the cave walls. We can see the handprints. Look, here's the handprint on the cave wall. I actually made a print around here. Oh, I think that you can barely see it once when I was painting. I am here. I am here. You've seen those paintings at Lascaux. Amazing. So I am. And then the other thing that happens is elaborate ceremonies start to emerge. That we bind together. We've got the fire. Elaborate ceremonies start to emerge around the hunt. Elaborate spiritual ceremonies. And now we have the construction of temples emerging. Okay, so that's 35,000 years ago to 5,000 BCE. Then, here's some overlap. The next period's called classical civilizations, and that goes back to 7,000 BC. So there's overlap there between 7,000 and 5,000 BC. So from 7,000 BC or BCE, before the current era, to 1870 in the current era. 7,000 BC to 1870 in the current era. That's just, a while ago, 1870, 100 and some years ago. We had the classical civilizations emerge of Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, China, and parts of Europe. 3500 BC, writing emerges with notations that can actually record the sounds of speech. So you could actually read speech in the writing. And then we are rushing through all of history since the beginning of the universe. Okay, so then we come to the fourth stabilized period of human culture, and that's called the industrial nation state. Okay, so the industrial nation state emerges in 1870 of the current era, 1870 AD, right, to the present. Okay, so what happens? So that's a new era. So we've only got Paleolithic, Neolithic, classical civilizations, and then all of a sudden, bam, the industrial nation state. So you see how recent that all is. And in that place, we have a means of production, and everything becomes mechanized and, by the way, consequently owned. Ownership of the means of production. Who owns the means of production? So that's a lot of what we're dealing with today. Here we have the invention of electricity, telephones, automobiles, airplanes, sewing machines, radios, televisions, stoves, refrigerators, and computers. The valuation of everything in human culture shifted. So here we are. Okay, now, some historians are saying, so I think this is important for us to realize. Okay, some historians are saying that the new era has begun, another new next era that's moving out of the industrial nation state, which was started in 1870. There's not even a name for this new era. It's new. This is new.
Aquarius.
Oh, it is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Okay, so starting in, some people are placing the date 1980. 1980. Okay, what happens in this new era, because it's going to be the electronic age, but that's only part of it. So we've gone from the means of production have changed, and it's shifted into electronics, but it's completely different now. But that's only one of the things that is shifting. All of human philosophy is beginning to shift again. So a new era begins. So this is a time, this is going to herald a time of destabilizing forces. So destabilizing because it's moving from the industrial nation state to this next new whatever it is that we don't even have a name for, can't even identify yet, and don't know where it's going. So there will be all these restabilizing forces, new forces of stability that are going to be coming forward. Okay, how does a system stabilize? Because this is what brings us to where we are in the 4. A system stabilizes on the basis of what is important to us. And this is both in the universe, anywhere in the universe, or ourselves as creating systems in our society as human beings, or in a family, or even within our body as a system. A system stabilizes on the basis of what is important to it. That is what it values. And in the end, nothing will be totally stabilized ever. Because if it were totally stabilized, basically that would be, it would die. It would basically die. It's always changing, even if it seems relatively stable. So this power of stabilization that comes up could actually be called, and what I called it in visionary cosmology, is the cosmological power of quivering equilibrium. Because there are moments when it does become more stabilized. And then we're okay for a while because there's more consistency. We understand it better. But then something's going to come in sideways and disturb it. But right now, let's go with the equilibrium part of it and imagine that things are relatively stable. Okay, when things are relatively stable, what is created is a zone of emergence. And I want to say there are zones of emergence where things are destabilized as well. But we can consciously, through stabilizing certain aspects of our lives, we can actually create intentionally a zone of emergence. And in this zone of emergence, what we focus on is critically important. That's back to the tetrad as a place where something emerges. We can actually create that together, like we're doing right here. So we're creating Terra Nova together. It's a zone. It creates a zone of emergence where something can be born because we're focusing on it. And we're doing that intentionally, and that's what the universe does throughout. What we want to do is we want to focus on that which we value the most, to both give birth to it and then to keep it alive. So I tell the story a lot of the little tree. So you have a field full of seedlings, little trees that are growing, and then the goats come into the field and basically they just eat all the little trees. So if you want to protect one of those trees, what you have to do is build a fence around it or something like that to create a zone where the tree is going to be safe. Okay, so let's say you surround that little tree with a fence and the goats can't eat it. Okay, so eventually what's going to happen is that little tree can grow up and provide shade for the whole herd if it's given a chance. Okay, and that's where we come in for whatever we value in our lives. We need to come in, we need to put a fence around it, and we need to say, okay, stand away. I am protecting this zone. And something is going to grow out of the zone. So we as universe, if you can follow this, create times and spaces of stabilization. So we can do this intentionally. And now we cut to, so that's out of visionary cosmology. And now we cut to Kabbalah and Tarot of the Spirit, our other book that we're reading, for the power to focus, construct, and stabilize. Right? And so it starts by saying, for the gate of love. So this is Kabbalistic. For the gate of love, willfully and carefully surround the small tree with protection. Here is nurturance. Here is sanctuary. So what we're doing is we're actively creating sanctuary at this point, creating safe, unconditional refuge. sanctuary-like structures where energies can keep producing. So 4 is the building up place. It's a place where existence thrives. And it does work together with the 5 energy, which is the taking down energy. But right now we're just going to focus on the building up part, because we want to, if we focus on the building up part, we can create something. So this sphere of Hesed, it's called, this place where existence thrives, is a sphere of goodness. Hesed in Hebrew, it means goodness, kindness, and faithfulness. Those are the values of the 4th sphere. The 4th sphere, this is what's taught Kabbalistically, and the 4th sphere contains these values of this kindness and this faithfulness. The greatest lesson of this sphere is to actively develop the art of loving kindness and merciful forgiveness. And this is a quote straight out of Kabbalah and Terra, the Spirit. To actively develop the art of loving kindness and merciful forgiveness, quote, whether one is on the way in or on the way out of the house. So this is in my mind yesterday when I was watching one group leaving the house and one group entering the house. The intelligence of the 4s is called receptive intelligence. In the receptive intelligence, this is where we ask to receive. And then when we receive, we listen. We're asking to receive. And listen, listen, listen is the only way we can get it. The astrology is Jupiter, and Jupiter has to do with expansive beneficence. The spiritual experience of the 4 is called the vision of love. And what we're trying to do is actively operationalize that. What does that even mean? And in the new cosmology, it's stabilization. The cosmos maintains what it desires to keep. So if you want to keep something, you have to work at it. You have to work at it. Those, the 4 4s in the tarot, the 4s of spirit, heart, mind, and body, each one has, it's a 4 of fire, water, air, and earth, wind and earth, and each one has an affirmation connected with it. And I just wanted to share with you the affirmations. They're in the book, Kabbalah and Tarot of the Spirit, but I thought they were interesting given where we are right now. So the 4 of fire, spirit, the affirmation is, may I willfully seek loving spirit. May I willfully seek loving spirit. And then for water, which is heart, may I will myself toward union in compassion. May I will myself toward union in compassion. And then in mind is, may I expand awareness in love. That's the wind, mind. May I expand awareness in love. And then in the body, which is the earth, may I build my life on the image of love. May I build my life on the image of love. Love becomes an abiding spiritual value. And we, someone studying this or trying to take this in, we would ask, well, what does it mean to build my life in the image of love? Love, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, mercy. What does it mean to construct zones of emergence where a tiny tree of love can flourish? Love unites. Love is the unitive power. And love is about health and healing, because health is about wholeness. And wholeness means uniting, bringing in the pieces. Our idea, or what we want here, is to create spaces and times for enhancing a world we wish to bring into being. The world is both our body, it's a temple, it's a sanctuary, it's a refuge, it's a home. What are we going to protect, and how can we bless it? How can we create and maintain a value such as love? How could we structurally contain such a value? Okay, now if I ask you the question, like how, if we wanted to create, so I'm just going to make this up, if we wanted to create structures that, in which love could be contained, what type of structures, can you think of any types of structures that we could create that could contain love? I mean, if you make up something, does anything come to your mind?
Oh, a drum circle.
Oh, drum circle. Okay, a drum circle. Yeah, excellent. Anything else that just pops in your? I have a list of things here, but I just wondered if anything's popping into your consciousness.
A hug.
A hug. Oh, that's good. That's a structure. That's a structure, and it can become a practice. See, both of those things can become a practice. Drumming circle.
Could be too.
A performance. Exactly. A performance. Right? Yeah.
I was thinking of a healthcare system.
A healthcare system.
A system,
Totally.
A big structure.
Right.
Yeah.
A big structure. Okay, so here are some of the types of structures, and I just want to share this with you so you can think about this. Here are some of the types of ways we can structurally contain a value. And a value could be, for example, a value of love. Art, paintings, dimensional art, sculpture, statuary, performance pieces, dance, architecture, temples, shrines, writings, books, messages, blogs, scriptures, speech, prayers, mantras, especially things that are repeated over and over and over that carry a certain type of message. Programs, like you're saying, a program, some kind of system that we set up and put in place. And we can also contain and move a value through a transmission. And a transmission could be a blessing. We can march in the march and give our blessing to every single person in the march. That's a transmission of love. Bless you, bless you, bless you. What we're doing is creating spheres, or a sphere of being and becoming. And this is a sphere of influence. And it's a way that we can hold, finding ways that we can hold things together, that we can unite. Okay, the dark side of this is when, we create these zones of emergence, and then they become very institutionalized and very tight, and they're not serving a purpose that we would want them to serve. So the dark side of it would be control of the social and moral order. As some religions could come that way, or some political systems could become that way, where they're controlling the social and moral order, especially through the forcible imposition of visions and revelations. If you force your visions or your revelations onto somebody else. And somebody I was talking to recently used the term, which I really liked, for her visions and revelations. She used the term dream frequency, my dream frequency, and she told me her relationships always get screwed up when she tries to impose her dream frequency on somebody else, which I appreciated a lot, because I need to think about that myself. Our quest in Terra Nova is for each of us to search for the deep values we want to bring forth, and to ask ourselves if what we are being and becoming is aligned with these values that we feel inside of ourselves, especially now in a time of destabilization. We're in a time of destabilization. And if you look at the big transition, we could say, well, 1980 was a marker. We were already in it before that, but maybe 1980 became a historical marker where we can really see it. It's too soon. We'll know a lot more in another 50 years. But right now, it's too soon. But in this time of destabilization and new growth that always comes up in the time of destabilization, what will we bring forward? What will we protect, both individually and collectively? Okay, so one way we're searching ourselves, we're searching for this is by studying the values of the world's religions. And for example, we have this little book, tiny book, which I want you all to get if you haven't got it yet, called Guide to Divinity. This is an amazing piece of work. it takes all the world's religions and basically puts it on a couple of pages, 2 or 3 pages,
Wow.
and that's it. And it just, you've got all of them there. Okay, so the idea is to take this book, to look at this book, and peruse this book, and look through the entire, read the whole book, which you can do very easily in a few hours, or less. But as you're reading the book, to look at what do you resonate with, because it says, here's this religion, here are the main values, here are the key points, and here's the vision of the divine, and whatever it is. Okay, so I went through the whole book, and I just underlined anything I resonated with. And then I went back through. I said, oh yeah, I like this, I like this, I like this, and some of them have a lot more. Then I went back through and I looked at, okay, well, first I took note, I underlined, then I went back through and I outlined only my response to the book. Then I went back and looked at where I had the most responses that I really resonated with. And here was something really surprising. And I don't know how this is going to fall out for you, but I really resonated with the, quote, religion they called humanism. Okay, so French, 1760. First they have some early stuff. 6th century BC, Lao Tzu. 6th century BC, some of the Greeks. Thales, know thyself was very big, and then leap up to French. These are some of the things I responded to. French, 1765, love of humanity. Belief that there could be some error in the Bible. I underline that. There's some skepticism and a strong belief in the scientific method. And then focus on social justice, gender, racial equality, reproductive rights, civil rights, freedom of and from religion, separation of church and state, no sacred text, belief in evolution, and the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So I was surprised. I resonated with all of that. And then, surprisingly, because ever since I started on this path of the creation of Terra Nova, weird things have been happening, strange things. So a friend of mine who lives in Europe, who's actually American, but who I've known for, 40 years or so, moved to Amsterdam, and he was back around, and he told me, he said, oh, I'm in town for in town of Chicago. I'm in the United States right now because I wanted to go to a meeting of the American Humanist Association. And I said, really? I've just been studying that. And he says, humanism? And I said, yeah, which normally it wouldn't even have been in my consciousness. I said, as it turns out, there's a lot about humanism I really relate to. And he said, well, me too. Well, what do you really like? And I say, I start with those things I just listed because they were right on the top of my head. I had just finished. And he said, oh, yeah, and he said, me, having grown up Catholic, and he was actually my husband's best friend, and they were in the seminary together. They were supposed to be priests, right? Long story. So he says, well, having grown up Catholic, I really find this very refreshing that I would travel just to come to the U.S. just to go to the conference. And he said, I'd never been before. It's really great. I really loved it. Maybe you'd like to come. And I said, well, and then I started realizing where I diverge. And I said, well, I've got this other aspect of my consciousness too that is really strong, and that is mysticism and this sense of a shamanic reality. And I also appreciate the world's religions and the way people try to frame this. And he started asking me, well, what's mysticism? And I said, well, the world, for example, the cosmos coming alive, where you can feel this almost this preternatural color and movement and significance and meaning, and he just was going blank. So I stopped speaking about it. I didn't even get into talking about the guidance I feel and all of that, which is very hard to to focus on. But in terms of the values, I really related to the values of humanism. And I also noted at the time that I was working on this that a course in world religions, which went through all the world's religions like we're doing and like Houston Smith does and Noss does in this other book, I saw a course, university course on the world's religions, and the last course on the world's religions was called The New Secular Religion. And the holy book on that one was the U.S. Constitution, which they had listed in a course on religions. And I thought, that is amazing. I hadn't read the Constitution for many years, so I did order the Constitution. You can get this for nothing, for free or whatever on the internet, and started reading the Constitution again, which brings up this new kind of secular values, that the idea is to unite everybody in a new secular way. So as we view this whole picture of the movement of humanity, what we want to do is we want to seek our own deep sense of purpose and meaning and participation. How will we participate? How will we know ourselves? And then how will we bring forth? How will we contain and protect our children? Those things that emerge from us, they could be physical children, but the children that emerge from us that seem like things of great value, how will we protect those children, the children of our spirit, our heart, our mind, and our body? How will we create refuge for the children of the future, which is part of our vision? What about the children of the future? Even as these children struggle again and again to find their own lives in their own way, and even the non-physical children that we produce, it could be anything, it could be an art form, even that we're going to have to let go, and it's going to find its own way. And there arises, from us as the mothers, that vision of sorrow. Because even though we try to protect it, we try to save it from the critics or whatever, if we can't, all we can do is do the best we can, even amid our sorrow, to focus on the positive and the proactive and the protection. Okay, so I want to end this right now, and I want to leave you with this basically. Conscious reflection and conscious participation bring alive the excitement and the possibilities for ourselves as living universe. We are living universe. And the excitement is in knowing that we are living universe, evolving our very own being.